From Media Trackers Ohio, Jason Hart is with us, the communications director for the organization. Jason, good evening to you, sir.
Good evening. How you doing?
It's going very well. Thanks very much for coming on the show tonight.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
You bet. You guys are doing some interesting stuff, and the Daily Caller has picked up on this. I'm glad to see you all are getting some national attention with what's going on. I guess the organization, Media Trackers Ohio, you guys filed some Freedom of Information Act requests?
We actually just sent a public records request. There was a story out of Florida somewhere around mid to late May of this year that prompted my reporter to just submit a public records request to the mayor's office here in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay, yeah, Sean Carena was doing some work for his blog All Nine Yards and ran across some emails or got some emails from the Orlando area between the Orlando regional coordinator for Mayors Against Illegal Guns and some other folks. So you decided that you knew that there was did you know that there was a regional coordinator there in Columbus?
We knew that Mayor Coleman here in Columbus was the Ohio chair for Mayors Against Illegal Guns. It wasn't until Jesse Hathaway, my reporter, started digging into it that we found there's actually a guy that works full-time in Mayor Coleman's office whose salary is paid by Mayors Against Illegal Guns, who's actually paying into a taxpayer-funded retirement program. And just because of some of the things that were uncovered in Florida, Jesse thought it would be interesting to kind of check and see what Mayors Against Illegal Guns was up to in Ohio, and it turned out we found some pretty interesting emails from that public records request.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the first story that I saw had to do with some emails that were going around right after a school shooting in Ohio.
Yes, we ran that story. I think that was the end of last week. There was a shooting in Chardon, Ohio, which is a really small town, around 5,000 people, in northeast Ohio. A really terrible high school shooting, as any high school shooting would be, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a website set up within a day or so of the shooting, rememberingchardon.com, where people were encouraged to go leave their thoughts, condolence messages for the victims and for the community there. And there was actually a Republican blogger here in the state who went to the site, left a quick message for the people in the city, and then within the next few weeks, he realized that he was receiving emails from this group, Mayors Against Illegal Guns. And that was back, again in the spring following the school shooting in Chardon. He had speculated, since there was nothing else he had done that he thought would get him on a list for Mayors Against Illegal Guns.
Right.
He had speculated that it was tied to that website, but he didn't have any evidence to really prove it other than, hey, I'm suddenly getting these emails that I didn't sign up for. We actually found, as part of the emails, the internal emails from Mayors Against Illegal, from Mayors Against Illegal Guns that we got in this records request, that within a couple hours of that shooting in the high school, there were emails flying around, and a lot of this stuff is driven from Mayor Bloomberg's office. Bloomberg is the co-founder of Mayors Against Illegal Guns. He and, I believe, Mayor Menino in Boston founded the organization. And so pretty much anything and everything that happens that's related to Mayors Against Illegal Guns is driven through Bloomberg's office. So it doesn't matter that here in Ohio we're hundreds of miles away. There were messages going back and forth. The gist of them basically was, how do we take advantage of this tragic shooting for one of our campaigns? And actually, I'll read a quote here from a consultant involved with Mayors Against Illegal Guns. And this is a direct quote from, what is the guy's full name? Something Orchid. Why can I not find his first name? That's making me crazy. Lance Orchid is actually the director of Fund for a Safer Future, which is a group that works closely with Mayors Against Illegal Guns. He sent an email saying, I hope that we can do some rapid response. Perhaps this is the perfect time to push out the new microsite petition around guns on campus. And then later that day, a far-left group here in Ohio called Progress Ohio, one of their leaders sent an email saying that he was working on a website. He would have the website finished within the next few hours. And then the next day, another guy in Mayor Bloomberg's office sent an email to this big whole list of regional coordinators for Mayors Against Illegal Guns. Mm-hmm. And in that email, he was kind of recapping here's our actions following this shooting in Ohio. He listed under Progress Ohio, one of the things that Progress Ohio had done as part of their rapid response was, quote, created rememberingchardon.com webpage, will send email directing lists to that page, and ask them to offer their condolences. New email acquisitions will be shared with Mayors Against Illegal Guns, and a small subset of these names will be shared with, and then there's an acronym for the Ohio Coalition Against Gun Violence. So people were encouraged to sign their email address and put their name on this page, sending some condolences to victims of this school shooting. And unbeknownst to them, that was actually a web form that was used to harvest email addresses for Mayors Against Illegal Guns to use in their future campaigns.
Okay. And so, again, I'm glad that you guys pointed this out, because, again, it's stuff like this that typically doesn't get a lot of coverage. And then the latest story talks about actually what the response was in the mayor's office to a request by your organization to interview the mayor of Columbus.
Yeah, this was interesting, and I've been looking over individual emails for individual stories as Jesse sends me the drafts to review. But I spoke with him on the phone while he was drafting up the story that you saw that ran today at the Daily Caller.
Yeah,
and he mentioned that as a result of his email to the mayor's office in Columbus, there was an email sent out to Bloomberg's office, to a consultant in D.C., and then from there, the D.C. consultant forwarded the message to Media Matters for America with the message, hey, Matt, Matt being the name of the guy at Media Matters, you familiar with this organization? And then within about 15 minutes, he's got a response from the guy at Media Matters. As it happens, I just read a profile of them. They're a right-wing Oppo research org with small teams working out of several states. And then as proof of this fact that Media Matters, Media Trackers is a right-wing Oppo research org, the guy from Media Matters for America pastes in its entirety a story that ran in May from Mother Jones. So obviously it's not going to be a big shock to anybody that Media Matters for America treats Mother Jones as gospel, but it is very interesting that when a reporter for an openly conservative, it says right at the top of every page on the Media Trackers Ohio website, we're a conservative, nonprofit, nonpartisan investigative watchdog, and we just sent an email asking if someone in the mayor's office could talk about Mayors Against Illegal Guns and what Mayor Coleman was doing with that organization. Immediately, that gets kicked up to folks in Bloomberg's office, to a consultant in D.C. who's in charge of Mayors Against Illegal Guns, and they, right away, who do they go to but Media Matters for America when they want to know who this new, sketchy, shadowy, conservative media outlet is?
Right. And, and it's interesting. You guys point out that there's some evidence that private emails or private email addresses are being used for at least some communication. There's one email that actually starts out, quote, is this the one you sent me on my Gmail account?
Yes. Obviously, you've clicked through and actually looked at the emails.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Lee Roberts is the name of the individual who works in Mayor Coleman's office, whose salary is paid by Mayors Against Illegal Guns, and he very frequently uses a Gmail address. Most of the emails that we received as a result of our public records request are actually City of New York email addresses, and I think it was the Chardon story where we cited the titles of some of these people. It's unbelievable the range of positions working in not Coleman, but Mayor Bloomberg's office in New York City. He's got a special counsel for firearms policy. He's got, and of course I can't find any of them. Now that I've said, there's hundreds. They're obvious. They're everywhere. But it's interesting to see the sheer number. It's not, there's some dude in Mayor Bloomberg's office
right.
who focuses on gun control. 3 or 4 or 5 people in Mayor Bloomberg's office, their regional coordinators around the country. And what was interesting in the story initially reported by the blogger in Florida is it's kind of their strategy to say, yeah, we're just against illegal guns. Everybody's against illegal guns. So we're going to work with mayors around the country to install Mayors Against Illegal Guns regional coordinators who are effectively anti-Second Amendment lobbyists.
Yeah, well, that's
salaried by Mayors Against Illegal Guns, but
see, that
obviously get some of their overhead covered. If I'm working out of the mayor's office, there are certain expenses that Mayors Against Illegal Guns is not going to incur just because I'm a public employee, I've got an office, I've got all the resources that go along with it.
Well, absolutely. And by the way, Sean Carena is actually watching tonight, sent in a talk back just a moment ago and said, we're now getting documents from the coordinators in Florida, Ohio, Wisconsin, Washington State, and Maine. So clearly much more to come here.
Thank you very much for your work, Sean Carena. That was a great story in Florida, and we're trying to do our part to hold some folks accountable here in Ohio.
Absolutely. And you know, again, for people who, because, you know, I assume at some point there'll be pushback on your reporting here. And the only thing that I would say is to people who want to, well, what's the big deal? You know, nothing wrong here. Imagine for a second, just replace Mayors Against Illegal Guns with National Rifle Association.
Right.
And what would the media response be to the National Rifle Association having regional pro-Second Amendment coordinators operating out of city halls, with a majority of their funding being provided for by the NRA, but some of their salary, some of their benefits being provided for by taxpayers. And, you know, while there's no formal, they're not registered lobbyists, they are going to be working to promote a pro-gun agenda,
right,
and a pro-Second Amendment agenda. Jason, if you had written that story, and if your reporter had written this story, you'd be Pulitzer Prize winners.
Somebody would have flown me to New York by now, I'd imagine. I'd be sipping cocktails in some green room someplace.
Oh, without a doubt, you'd be like hanging out on Bill Maher's lap right now. I mean,
that's a stretch. I may have to backpedal.
They would literally hand over the keys to Current TV for you, and just let you take over.
That's worth about as much as Newsweek magazine. So I could get a Snickers bar and the discount candy machine.
Well, you'd be the liberal of the week. You'd get, Jimmy Fallon. You'd get, you'd get to sit on the couch with Jimmy Fallon. You'd be on the Daily Show. You'd be on the Colbert Report. But
it would be shocking and startling, and it would be the front page of every national paper.
Right. So here's my next question for you. What's the Columbus Dispatch done with this story?
With this story, as far as I know, they've done nothing. We actually weren't very familiar with Mayors Against Illegal Guns ourselves, despite the fact that my reporter and I both obviously pay pretty close attention to the news in Ohio.
Right.
It's kind of the same old story, and a lot of the reason that Media Trackers exists in Ohio and in the other states where Media Trackers is up and running now, there's so much stuff that somehow slips past these organizations like the Columbus Dispatch and the Cleveland Plain Dealer and the Dayton Daily News, where they've got 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 people just covering day-to-day news, and they do maybe a quick little puff piece about this organization where they quote the mayor, and whatever the mayor says it is, well, that's what it is, and that's the story, and you may never hear about it again. So we kind of exist to try and fill in those gaps. And again, we advertise clearly right at the top of every page on our site. We're conservative, so by all means, attack me for being biased. I don't know how far it's going to get you because I advertise my bias. I wear it on my sleeve. We're coming from a conservative perspective. We're writing about things that we think are important, and we're human. The difference between us and all of the big papers, other than fancy journalism degrees and a whole lot more money and a whole lot more employees, is that we're honest about the perspective that we have and where we're coming from when we report on these stories.
Right. Well, and look, I've got the same attitude. I mean, I don't pretend to be unbiased when it comes to Second Amendment issues, but I do believe in being fair, or at least I try to be fair. And I think that this is a fair report that you've done. Again, I'm kind of shocked that whoever the City Hall reporter is at the Columbus Dispatch, I assume that they still have one, has not followed up on this story. Perhaps they're unaware of it, but if you haven't sent it on to them, please do so, because, again, I don't care where you're coming from. I don't care what your position is on gun control. This is a story that I think the readers and the residents of Columbus, Ohio, should be interested in.
Yeah, one of the things that I told Jesse as he was digging through the public records request, and we were talking about the kind of things that were in there, and we've got probably another story or two in the pipeline just from that single records request.
Okay.
One of the things that I said to him when he started rattling off some of the stuff that was in these emails we'd received from Mayors Against Illegal Guns.
Hey, Jason, I tell you what, man,
Yeah.
we're up against a break here. Can I get you to stick
Okay.
around for just a couple more minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, because I want to hear the story here. We're talking with Jason Hart from Media Trackers Ohio. We got to step away for just a moment. We'll be right back after this with more Cam and Company. Welcome back to Cam and Company. I hope you're pretty in pink, right? Is that what this is? Yeah, psychedelic furs. Somewhere Kurt Schlichter is smiling. Deal of the day, here of the day, coming up top of the hour right now. Jason Hart with Media Trackers Ohio is with us. We've got about 3 minutes left here at the end of the hour. And Jason, yeah, go ahead and tell us. You said you've got more coming.
Yes, we definitely do. And you kept me on over the break, and I'm desperately trying to think of a way to work a car chase or something more exciting into the story. But I was talking to my reporter as he was kind of relaying the things that he found in his public records request to me. It's a lot of it really reads like the sort of thing that the mainstream, the quote-unquote mainstream media would just shrug off as the pipe dreams of some right-wing nut job. Well, obviously, a gun control organization wouldn't coordinate within hours of a shooting to find some way to capitalize it, to find some way to use this tragedy to pump up their own mailing list, to harvest email addresses from folks who are just trying to send condolences to victims of a school shooting. We found evidence that they did some similar things. They tried to use the shooting in Tucson to advance their cause, and obviously you can see that they have some concerns about the media digging up some of the stuff that they've worked out behind the scenes. When the D.C. consultant who heads Mayors Against Illegal Guns sent an email to Media Matters, he added, after asking who this sketchy Media Trackers organization is, he adds, quote, "If it actually breaks into media, would be great if we could talk." Because naturally, any left-of-center organization, if something that they don't want to get out in the media finds its way out into the media, who do they turn to but Media Matters for America? And
I don't know if you know this or not, Jason, but Emily Miller has written a piece in the Washington Times talking about what you all have uncovered at Media Trackers Ohio.
Did that story run already?
It came out this evening.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
That's good to hear. I'll have to take a look. I thought that was coming up next week. So, yeah, that's good. So, I don't think it's the most blockbuster story ever. I think that Jesse uncovered some really interesting information.
Yeah.
And did a really good job of communicating it, and we're trying to get it out there as much as possible because this is a bipartisan organization. Again, the name, Mayors Against Illegal Guns, well, who's not against illegal guns when you throw the word illegal in there, whatever that's supposed to mean?
Right.
There's a lot of Republican mayors, not just in Ohio, not just in New York, but around the country that are involved with Mayors Against Illegal Guns. And I think some of those folks may be taking a second look at their involvement in this organization when they see some of the stuff that we've uncovered, assuming they actually get a chance to find it. And if the Washington Times is picking it up, that's great. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about it this evening.
Absolutely. Hey, Jason, we're almost out of time, but listen, thank you so much for coming on the program, and hope we can do it again.
Yeah, I would love that. Thanks for having me.
All right, Jason Hart with Media Trackers Ohio joining us here on the program.